Sons of the Forest has overtaken Starfield on Steam for the most wishlisted game, and this is a very great position to be in. It was previously held by the day before, but we all know how that amazingly fake and phony game got removed from Steam and will likely never be there again. But Starfield took the position right back for a while, and now all of a sudden, a survival game that is coming out in early access very quickly has taken that coveted position on Steam as the most wishlisted game. So I want to put this game on your radar. I got an article here from PC Gamer I wanted to take a look at and just kind of think why on earth this game is taking over, what could be leading it to overtake one of the more anticipated games this year, which is Starfield. It's easily in the top 3 most anticipated games of 2023, maybe at least top 5, but still a very sought after game. And I know survival games do very, very well on Steam, and this one actually looks pretty promising. Very good graphics. It could be looking at the next sort of Valheim situation. If you've not checked it out, be sure to wishlist it. Be sure to check it out when it goes live. And let's take a look at this article here from PC Gamer. It says, this early access survival game just climbed over Starfield to become the most wishlisted game on Steam. One creepy island just became more sought after than 1,000 planets. Very clever there, Christopher Livingston of PC Gamer. We're always keeping our eye on the ever-shifting fortunes of Steam's most wishlisted games, and there have been some pretty interesting developments lately. A few weeks ago, there was the whole The Day Before debacle, where one of the most wishlisted games on Steam abruptly vanished due to a trademark dispute, a story that managed to only get weirder from there. Yeah, if you believe that's why it was removed and why the YouTube videos are being removed, sure, that's why it got removed. Anyway. And this week, horror survival sandbox Sons of the Forest took over the top wishlist spot from Starfield, Bethesda's intensely anticipated RPG. It looks like more Steam users are now interested in exploring a single creepy island than they are in visiting 1,000 planets in outer space. Now, to be fair, I understand the comparison here, but survival games are very, very popular. They're commonly the ones that people look to and wishlist on Steam. I use a Steam database application that sort of allows me to see games that are coming and which ones are the most wishlisted, and sim games and survival games always climb to very high numbers of wishlisted, users. So I don't know if that's fair. Starfield is also a Bethesda title, and if you look at Fallout 4 and Skyrim, they typically have done much better on console in their total number of sales. Starfield also being only on one console this time around as a Bethesda title may actually limit its reach. It'll also be on Game Pass, so it probably won't have near the number of commercial units moved as it might have if it was also on Sony or if it wasn't on Game Pass. So it is a little bit different, I do think, since the Sons of the Forest game is only available on Steam and it's coming in early access. It does have a little bit of an unfair advantage. Of course, there are a few explanations. They're going to try to come up with some here for why an indie survival game just trumped Bethesda's next RPG on players' shopping list. Starfield is coming to PC Game Pass at launch, so I'm sure tons of Steam users won't even be playing it on Steam. I actually am curious what that number would look like, because Steam users are very loyal to Steam. They recently got very upset that Returnal required Epic Online services for the co-op portions of Returnal. Many of them thought it was Ghost installing the Epic Store. It was immediately getting downvoted by people who didn't really understand what was going on. Returnal sitting about an 80 or an 81%. It should have fared much better, in my opinion, with the Steam audience, especially because it's a rogue. It's a very creative rogue, but I think just that little snag of seeing Epic on there actually hurt it. So I'm not sure how many Steam users are going to be clamoring to use PC Game Pass. Microsoft's storefront on the PC has been sort of notoriously not liked by users, sort of slow, sort of clunky, and Steam users are known for not wanting to use a single other launcher out there. Despite loads of speculation, Starfield still doesn't have a dang release date yet. Also, why even bother wishlisting Starfield? It's not like you'll need an email reminder from Valve when it finally launches. You'll hear about it from every streamer, YouTuber, and gaming site in the world. Hey, wait a minute, that's me, and the person writing this, they're right. They're totally right. You will not need to be emailed about Starfield's release date, but I don't think that's quite the reason why it got bumped as most wishlisted. It's still a pretty amazing feat for a game. It's about chopping down trees and hacking up cannibals in the woods, especially considering developer Endnight Games announced only 2 weeks ago that Sons of the Forest will launch into early access on February 23rd rather than as a full release. I'll be honest, I've watched the gameplay and I think the graphics are impressive. It actually looks really good for a survival game. It's not like mind-blowing, but typically survival games don't really strive to have excellent environmental fidelity and lighting and rain and stuff, and it actually looks quite good. But then when you look at the combat, I do think that is one area where Sons of the Forest will struggle a little bit for some people. There's a clunkiness, there's a clumsiness. The bow looks really nice, but then when you start to see a lot of the mobs coming out of the forest and the guns, it kind of looks a little rough around the edges. So I think it's probably the right decision to push this into early access. It'll make people a little bit more forgiving of it, and I also think people don't necessarily expect like action level gunplay and fighting in a survival game, but since that is a major element of the content loop according to their own sort of trailers they're putting out there, you would think that the shooting and the combat would need to be smoothed over quite a bit, at least in my opinion. The words early access survival game typically doesn't strike confidence in the hearts of gamers. It certainly doesn't. There's been plenty of games that sort of get lost in the limbo of early access and never really come out. So cool, but what the heck is Sons of the Forest? So they're going to try and explain it here. I mean, it looks a little bit, it kind of reminds me of Valheim in that there's like an element of mystery and progression, and you're trying to find things, not just sort of build a house. So if you're not familiar with Sons of the Forest, it's the sequel to another survival game, The Forest, which hit early access in 2014, back when Steam Greenlight was still a thing. Marooned on an island, you had to build a shelter, craft weapons and tools, gather food and water, and deal with the island's scary as hell inhabitants, a tribe of vicious cannibals. So it sounds like they've not much moved from that theme. The Forest had a pretty shaky start and unfinished games often do, but it also showed tons of potential with striking visuals, horrifying enemies, and memorable survival and combat systems. You could use a severed leg as a melee weapon. That sounds phenomenal. Over the next several years, the developers patched it repeatedly, added new features like co-op and even VR support, and eventually drew a crowd. More importantly, the crowd stayed. There are still thousands of people playing The Forest every day, and its peak consecutive player count of over 76,000 happened only a few months ago. That's really impressive for a survival horror game, and it's likely had a bit of a surge because people are sort of anticipating, oh hey, Sons of the Forest is coming out, let's check out the original. Now, the videos are age restricted, so I'm not going to play the footage. It gets a little gruesome. I think YouTube's being a little strict, but we're not going to mess around with the gameplay footage in this video because I don't really feel like getting age restricted, but it is a little gruesome and it's a little bit dark. I mean, you got cannibals, you got dead bodies and stuff like that. So that is one of the things you're probably going to find about the gameplay footage when you go to try to watch it, is you're going to find that age restriction. You got to watch it on YouTube, and you got to be logged in, and you got to be the right age to watch it. So The Forest became sort of a cult hit, and the sequel has some fun goodies planned. This time, you're visiting an island to locate a missing billionaire, and you're not alone. Not only can you play Sons of the Forest in co-op, but you'll have a companion to help you out too. As revealed by IGN last month, an AI-controlled survivor named Kelvin will pick up the slack by chopping wood, stockpiling resources, and handling other mundane chores while you focus on building or exploring. I think that's a creative take on doing a survival game, because I do think a lot of the times people enjoy that content loop, but eventually you want to do something else. If you're always kind of having to come back and do those elements, it can be a little bit of a flat tire. So I think that's an interesting approach here. My wife and I were playing a game called Dismantle, and sadly, it was so satisfying and so enjoyable in the beginning, but the map is just so enormous. The content loop really just ran out of steam for us. And we got really far and we got pretty strong. But the more we tried to find the mysterious things or the challenging things, the more it was like, oh, we're just not equipped. It's going to take a lifetime to get strong enough to really do the new fun things. I can highly recommend Dismantle. It was a very fun game. We're not really survival gamers, so we kind of fell out of love with it. It was kind of scratching the dungeon crawler looter itch that we have, waiting for Diablo 4. And I can see how survival games would want to do something like this, adding sort of this AI Kelvin to manage some of those more mundane, repetitious things, and then you can kind of go off and do your own thing and explore. There are apparently other companions you can recruit later in the game, including a 3-legged mutant. That's definitely intriguing enough for me to put it on my own wish list. According to its Steam page, Sons of the Forest plans to remain in early access for 6 to 8 months, though that could change depending on player feedback. It's set to launch on February 23. Now, there are lots of different opinions about early access. There are some people that think that you shouldn't be able to do it. There are some people who refuse to support early access. There are others who think it's a wonderful way to allow a game to kind of get out in the wild. Full disclosure, it's not ready yet, and then polish and receive that player feedback without sort of the misleading thing that tends to happen, which is games aren't ready, they get shoved out at full price, everybody's irritated waiting for patches, and it's just a frustrating endeavor. I actually think this is fine in certain circumstances. I don't really have a problem with games doing this, because at the end of the day, some games require that level of symbiosis with the community, with the general public, especially survival games where there's lots of unforeseen permutations of player behavior combined with AI, combined with the world itself. So I'm okay with this. I definitely think people should be checking this one out. If you go to its Steam page right now, it gives you all the information that you need. It's got really, really great gameplay and really great footage. It's labeled as an early access survival horror multiplayer survival game. It is similar to Valheim and V Rising is what they're saying. I actually kind of feel like this could be the next Valheim. I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you guys think this has a chance to be the next Valheim? It's sort of come blasting onto the scene, and they might have actually benefited from the day before drifting out of everybody's frame and taking this strong position on Steam. Could be very, very good for Sons of the Forest. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Come back, leave a comment, make sure and hit subscribe so you don't miss my live streams. As always, hit subscribe and the bell button on this video, and I'll see you in the next one.